Hi, this is Destin Whipple again with VOSH Arizona. This is our video on the refraction station. So this is station number 6 usually, right after triage often. At this point you should have a fair amount of information, and I would encourage you to look it over. And here's our exam form again, and you'll notice on here there's a reason for the visit. So where are they blurry, if that's their main reason? What glasses are they wearing over here? That can be helpful information. Of course, what kind of medical conditions do they have? The entering visual acuities are right here. And then if pinhole was done, hopefully that gives you a feel for their vision potential. And then also you might glance down here at the yellow portion. This is where triage might have already documented, for example, if they have cataracts. That might give you some good information too for what to expect during the refraction. I also want to point out right here, this is on our form, a place where you can put their best corrected visual acuity. So after refraction, you're expecting them to see this well. And this is very important for when we dispense the glasses later on after they've been made, and we check their visual acuity when we dispense the glasses. We want to make sure that they're seeing what we're expecting. And more importantly, for example, if somebody who has cataracts, we don't know for sure when they're going to get cataract surgery. We might have prescribed something to help them in the meantime, and maybe the best vision is 20/40 or 20/50 or 20/60, but maybe that's a lot better than what they're still used to seeing it, maybe 2100 or something like that. So having that documented here really helps the optician or whoever is dispensing the glasses to know, oh yeah, you're not 20/30 or 20/20, but you're seeing as good as we were expecting. Okay, this is where you'll document most of your findings in refraction. This is a good place you can use for what you might term as the manifest refraction, or your most plus to your best visual acuity. Some people call that. And then this could be where you put down your final prescription. There's 2 places, okay? Or you can put both up here. There's some flexibility here, but you want to make it clear what you want prescribed. So what you're wanting prescribed, I think, would be down here, okay? And so this can be kind of your preliminary. You may not always prescribe your manifest refraction, and we'll go through some examples, okay? All right, so refraction, I love refraction because this is where often you make a huge benefit in people's lives, and it's really fun. Now, this is a good time to bring up what were the levels of prescriptions that we're planning to prescribe. So we want to make the most impact and the best impact and improvements to the most people's vision here on our trip to Mexico. So we've made a decision that we're not going to prescribe less than 1 diopter, okay? So our minus 0.75s, we're not going to be prescribing, okay? So let's talk about a few things. In refraction, remember back to your optics lab, JND, just noticeable difference. This is important, okay? In human beings, most of us cannot really tell a difference less than a 0.25 or a quarter of a diopter. So I want to bring up what I'm going to call our functional just noticeable difference, okay? Because, a lot of times when we go down to Mexico, we're working with people that have never had an eye exam before. So I want you to think about it for a minute. They might be 30 years old, they might be 50 years old, and this is their first eye exam. So this is where functional, just noticeable difference comes into play. When you get down to the last half a diopter or so, they're probably not going to functionally benefit after that, okay? So a 20/30 endpoint is just as good for the most part, as a 20/20 endpoint when this person might be used to 2200 for their whole life. You've already won the battle at 20/30. So win the battle, but don't overdo it. All right. So if this person's entering visual acuity, they're 50 years old, the first exam, you're coming down to around a -4 or something like that. Don't worry about if it's a -350 or -4. You know, you're going to get there and you've already won the battle. So prescribe it. You've done great. You've changed this person's life. Okay. So that last half diopter or so, don't worry too much about in certain situations like that one I just described, and think of a functional, just noticeable difference. You know, when they're used to 2200, you know, don't mince over the last quarter diopter. You've won the battle. Move on. Also, I think the point of clear and comfortable, we want to really make their vision as best as possible. We want it to be as clear as possible, but we also want it to be comfortable. So that's going to come up in a couple of things here too. All right. So I'm going to go through a couple examples here in a minute. I also think that it's important to ask yourself, who are you dealing with and what are they used to? So if they're giving you not really sharp responses when you're going through the refraction process, and if it's their first exam, you might stop and ask your translator or talk to them about the process a little bit so that they really understand. You know, if neither of them are like really clear, just try to tell you which is better, that sort of thing. Go through the process a little bit with them might be helpful. Also, some people may want to give you hand signals, you know, each person's a little different, but so in those instances, you might go 2 or 3 clicks up or 2 or 3 clicks down as far as your bracketing. That might be more effective than just 1 click. And I'll be honest, most of the time I do 2 clicks to start when I bracket, and then I might go to 1, or sometimes I start with 3 and then go down, because you're wanting to start with where they can really tell a difference. If they can't, then you got to do something different, or you're going to be, you know, probably frustrated and not feel like you're getting anywhere. Don't be afraid to do retinoscopy as well. Hopefully you'll have autorefraction, but retinoscopy can really help you get a starting point. And again, don't fret. Don't for optometry students, you're just getting out of optics lab, or it's been really recent, and you know, you might have had a practical where you had to get within a quarter diopter or a half diopter or something like that. You're probably doing great if you can get within a diopter. That's good. Don't sweat the small stuff, especially with retinoscopy. Just let it be your starting point and go from there. Okay, here's a couple examples. So example number 1 here. This is to talk about, again, our limit. We're not prescribing less than 1 diopter. So our 0.75s, both the right eye and the left eye, are essentially a spherical equivalent of 0.75 here. So we won't be prescribing that. Now, for some people, some parents, if their child is a 0.75 and they're struggling to see in the back of class, that may be concerning for them. So talk to them. We want to help them. Suggest that they move to the front of the class, and their child should be able to see if they have a minus 0.75 at the front of class. Also, maybe this isn't a child. Maybe this is an adult. Maybe their profession is driving and they're having trouble seeing at night. This may be more important. We're still not prescribing that 0.75, but let them know they can still go to the optical and select a frame. We'll give them the frame and they can take it to their local optical, and we can dispense them a prescription that they can then have the lenses filled into their new frame. And so that it'll save them on the cost of the frame, and it'll be a lot more affordable for them. Okay, again, most people, if they're minus 0.75, they're still functioning for most things, and it's not going to be the end of the world if they don't get a prescription with this today at the clinic. Number 2 is, one eye may be below the 0.75, but the other eye may be higher. Then we prescribe, okay? We can help this person. Number 3, some comments about cylinder. You want to be careful with the cylinder, especially with your first time through. If this person's 20, 30, 50 years old and this is their first exam and you're getting something like this, plano -4 for the cylinder, this is important, but for the comfortable part, clear and comfortable, if you prescribe plano -4, they may have a hard time getting used to that prescription. A better option might be to prescribe a spherical equivalent by softening it a little bit on the cylinder and prescribe something like a -0.5, -3. That may be better for them. And again, that spherical equivalent, maybe they're only seeing 20/30 with that instead of 20/25 or 20/20, but it may be more comfortable for them. So you may consider softening some of those types of prescriptions if there's a lot of cylinder. Sometimes because of the UV exposure here in the Southwest that we have, you'll see pterygium and you might see a fair amount of astigmatism cylinder. So keep that in mind. Number 4 here, one more example. Again, win the battle, but don't overdo it. This prescription is primarily sphere, and they do have some cylinder, and you can prescribe it. I'm not saying don't prescribe it, but don't get too excited about 5 on the axis or, 2 or 3 on the axis. If you're running around and you're back and forth on the axis, go for the middle there and prescribe it. If they're kind of back and forth between a 5 axis and a 175, just prescribe the 180, you'll be fine. This is primarily sphere, so the axis on the cylinder, it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't spend too much time on it. You've already won the battle when you're getting close there. Another thing to look at is on here, we've kind of made a place where people can write in the lensometry reading. So if somebody has their prescription already, you know what it is, you might get to a point on sometimes where you realize, man, I can't really make this much better. I'm getting pretty much the same prescription that they're used to. You might just educate that person and say, hey, your glasses prescription is not changed, and reassure them that they're doing well with their prescription. They may feel like their lenses are really scratched, or you may see, or they may comment that their frames are falling apart. If they need new glasses, that's fine. We can still prescribe and they can get a new pair, but just let them know, hey, your prescription really hasn't changed, and that's good, or we can't really make it better. Similarly, if their lensometry is a prescription similar to this first example, we're not going to prescribe it, but you might still reassure them that, hey, your prescription hasn't really changed. It falls lower than what we prescribe at this clinic. If you want a copy of the prescription, we can give it to you. You can get the frames for free if you want here today, but just reassure them that their vision's really pretty good. Let me just look over my notes real quick. I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, sometimes you'll get somebody that has substantial cataracts, but the doctor at triage might have wanted you to just try and see if you can get them any better. So if you can, great. If you can't, just say, hey, look, we can't really make it any better. Hopefully you'll be scheduled for cataract surgery soon. One more thing on our low plus or hyperopic prescriptions, a +1 or a +75. Look, you can just send them to the readers and they can do the lowest reader and probably do just as good as a prescription +1. So we don't really need to prescribe those. Similarly, I've found that when I go to Mexico, a lot of people do want a bifocal, and so we can prescribe that. If you have somebody that's a +1, +2, bifocals are wonderful. But if you have somebody that's like, I really don't want bifocals, well, you could write at the bottom here a +1 for the first prescription and a +3 for their near prescription. And then check the box here where it says pre-made, over the counter. We've got them here. We can dispense both of those to them today at the clinic, and it'll be wonderful for them. But if they're wanting bifocal, we can do it. If they're not, for those kinds of situations, can just dispense 2 different powers of the over-the-counter reading glasses, and they will be very happy, and they'll leave with them today. They don't need to come back. They don't need the prescription glasses. One other point, sometimes if they didn't go through triage yet and you're struggling, you might stop and actually look in their eyes with your ophthalmoscope or retinoscope and see if it's cataracts. In those cases, you might want to go ahead and put in dilation drops, and maybe try to look with dilation and even do retinoscopy after dilation, because you might get more information there that will help you know if you can really help them or not. But don't be afraid to stop and do a quick health exam if needed at refraction, especially if they haven't been to triage yet or ocular disease. I think that's pretty much it. Again, don't forget to put in here their best corrected visual acuity. And if you're going to cut the cylinder like this, you might soften it. If their best visual acuity was 20/25 with all of their cylinder, but you're thinking, I'm thinking I better cut it a little bit to make it more comfortable for them, you might put as their best visual acuity here as a 20/30, okay? So that when they're dispensing their glasses, it's no surprise that they're seeing 20/30, okay? So again, this is really important for the very end here. We want to know what you're expecting them to see with the glasses that you're prescribing. All right, thanks again hopefully this is helpful, and I'm excited to see you all in Hermosillo.